Huzzah! Hello! How are we all doing this evening? Aha! I spy a hobbit. Hello! Oh. We're gonna spend more time in space. Doo-da, doo-da. I'm going to imagine that we're probably going to be bouncing further off of the display. Last time we did 30 Days in Space, with my hand being very broken. Let's come on now. There we are. I am very good, dear Hobbit. How are you this evening? Slash morning. I don't know. Time zones, am I right? Last time we did this, we played with the liquid crystal display. Well, all right, maybe that's not exactly accurate, but it's a flat panel. It's not the segment display. I don't know what to call this thing. I'm sure it probably, does it say? Would it tell me? It's probably in this example, right? Want to switch to OLED? OLED LED. All right. OLED display. OLED. There we are. That's better. Can't complain. That's fair. That is fair indeed. And I'm under the impression that we're going to build off of that. I don't necessarily know how different this particular exercise is going to be from the last time we looked at it with day 22, because it seemed like the last time they introduced a new component that we either didn't change the diagram around or we did slightly and the code kind of looked the same. So we're just going to run with it and kind of see where we end up. I don't know a whole bunch about the OLED display other than the last time we looked at the code. It left me with a lot to desire, because there's going to have to be a lot more learning before I do anything custom with that. But that's okay. That's why we learn. That's the whole idea, is to build on the knowledge, and I am no exception to that rule. So with that, let's get started. Come on. Aha! There we go. Alright, I'm gonna pump up the brakes on the music for a moment. Okay, now we should be ready to see what we're getting ourselves into. Oh.
Good morning, Stellar Navigator. We're still bobbing atop the cosmic waves of an alien ocean, but not for long.
We're rocking and
Today
rolling.
we can sit back and relax, knowing we've done everything we can to prepare for launch, our big day tomorrow. Yeah, big day. Lots of moving parts will be launched tomorrow, and everything needs to happen at precisely the right time, or the ocean will turn into an
It does sound like VR chat, doesn't it?
Time is of the essence. Time is short. Time won't give you time. Time.
Hey, that's copyright. Get out of here.
Okay, we're not quite done. We need a timer. All right, you clever explorer. Today's hardware task is a piece of interstellar cake.
I knew it.
We're simply
All right, so we are building
welcoming
off
back
that.
our old friend, the 7-segment display,
Okay.
to our current setup. Yes, that's right. The same one that played a crucial role in lighting our way up from the deep ocean. This won't be anything new to you. Just plug the 7-segment display into the wiring layout from yesterday. Easy, right?
So we
With
say.
each step, we're getting closer to our grand liftoff. As always, ensure that your connections are firm and correct. Let's get to it. Let's have a small detour to define macros. When you see define in our code, it's essentially a way of creating a shortcut or an alias. We set a keyword equal to a specific value or string of code. This way, instead of having to type out the whole thing every time, we can just use the keyword. It is also useful when we have the same thing written in multiple places, like occasionally pinouts, so we only need to change it once. This makes our code cleaner and easier to understand. It's like having a code name or a shorthand for your favorite lengthy space lingo. All right, on to today's simulation. We'll be adapting the done code from our Day 16 adventures for our 7-segment display.
Okay.
This time, it'll be there to signal the end of our countdown, like a digital pat on the back. If everything goes according to plan,
You're welcome.
tomorrow we can connect everything up to our thrusters. And then, well, you know the drill. Lift off. We're in the home stretch,
Whoosh?
Explorer. The stars are
I feel
within
like
our
that means
grasp.
whoosh.
Let's ensure this simulation goes off without a hitch and prepare ourselves for the big show.
That's not how any of this
For
works.
today's coding spree, we're going to cook up a function that sends us on a countdown journey. It's going to be an exhilarating watch, I promise. Once we're done, we'll celebrate by lighting up our 7-segment display with the victory chant, done. Just like we did back on day 16. Imagine it like a digital high five. If all goes well, this is precisely where we'll inject the codes for our long-awaited liftoff tomorrow. It's exciting, isn't it? Hold on to that curiosity, Explorer, as you walk through every line of our code in the daily breakdown. As always, I've cached it to your mission resources, so buckle up, it's coding time.
Hello everybody and welcome back to day 23.
Hello, goodbye, Alex. Meow. Let's see what we've got. A little bit of action. There we are. All right, so now we got the music back going. Okay, so to my expectations, we are reusing the display and we're adding a second display. Now, something I find interesting is once we have the display lit up with the word done, I'm imagining that it just gets written to the code once and then it'll just keep going. The idea of defines and macros, I mean, define macros, calculations. Interesting. Okay, so on the surface level, I do want to talk a tiny bit about the macros before we get into the wiring, because there's just a small amount we have to do. We have to hook up our, oh, it was the music. I'm like, I don't remember setting that to anything. I want to talk a little bit more about what a macro is. Because we've worked with things called functions before, and the function was a block of code that we can call multiple times over. Now, I'm not sure in the context of this project what's the difference between a macro and a function. A function has the capability of returning nothing or something. Now, that something is one thing, but I'll be curious to see what we have in the definition of a macro. At the most surface level, a macro is just an arrangement of activities that are all organized to run as many times as you see fit. Perfect example of that. You get up because you're hungry and you're like, I'm gonna go to my fridge. Then you open up the fridge door and you see no food in there. You're a little sad. You shut the door and go sit back down again. And then 15 minutes later, you promptly forgot that you've already checked the fridge and you call the macro again to get up from your chair, go look in the fridge, and be sad for a little while because there's still no food in the fridge. That macro could be called as many times as it needs to for you to get up, look in the fridge. If there's food, cool. You take it back with you. If not, you go back to your chair, but slightly a little sadder. Even more so if it happens multiple times over. I'm sure that probably stacks in some point. The sadness becomes more sadness by you finally remembering that you did it already. But the whole point of a macro is that it's just a subset of instructions that you can call multiple times. That is all that is. I'm not super happy with the way that was kind of glossed over, but like I said, I don't know if there's a difference between the two, or if they're just simply using that as another way to talk about the same thing. We'll see down there in the code, because the fact that there's the pound symbol, or some people call it the hashtag, indicates what a macro is. I'm imagining syntax-wise, that's the way you write the code. It's probably going to look different. What makes you use one over the other? I'm not sure, but that's okay. We'll work through it together. So let me get us switched over. And before we get into it, I want to show you the code that we had run previously. Oh, you know what? Hang on, we have to start a new project. This is the project from before, because we're on day 23. So we need a new sketch first. Oh, I won't steal the name. Alright, fine. I'll type it. Alright, so we have that. Take a that's better. Thank you, Hobbit, for pointing that out to me. It's different this time. Last time Mike died. This time OBS decided when it updated, it cleared this input. So the microphone was on and I saw it connected, but OBS in their infinite wisdom decided this piece of hardware was no longer going to be associated with this scene. I love OBS. It's a little evil sometimes. Okay. All right. Now that you can hear me in fantastic fashion, let me try that again. Okay. So here's what we have from last time. And we are going to be reusing our several segmented display. And what we're going to need is we're going to need our 4 wires here with male on one side and female on the other, so that we can attach to the headers that we have that are available on this component. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to swing over to, we're going to match some colors here. So if I'm holding this correctly, ground is going to be this bottom one. Hopefully should orient this correctly. All right, cool. So ground is going to go here, ground to ground, which I'm going to disconnect this because I don't want to short anything out here. All right, so we got ground to ground, and then we got to hook up these other 3. So our next one is going to be our voltage, and then we've got DIO, which is the serial line, and clock. So next in line is going to be our voltage, which I'm just going to push 3 of these on there together. So that makes this a little easier for me. I say that, unable to push the connectors on. Come on now. I believe I can do it. But can I actually do it? That's up for debate. Alright, there we go. Okay. So now with it like that, our next wire in line is going to be voltage. So what we're going to do now is take our white wire and plug it into our 5 volts. I'm plugging it directly in down here on 5 volts. And then it leaves us with 2 other leads. The next one is going to be the serial line, or the DIO, and then clock is going to be the brown wire. As a bit of a refresher, the clock wire, which is the top one, in this case the brown wire, is going to match the pulsing clock that is on here. Let me actually show you which component the clock is, because I've been doing a little bit of research lately to get a little bit more familiar with the actual different pieces on this. So if I scoot this a little bit into frame, our clocking component is this one right here that looks like the tiny little tin can. That is the timing crystal that is on the board. And this component is what gives off the clock speed that all of the components work off of. You can only ever work off of one clock signal when you have one of these devices involved. In any project, you need to just match the clock across all of the devices, or at least in the way I currently understand it. If there's a special use case, I'm unaware of that. My impression is that everything has to match that clock. So anytime that we tie in and have a component that requires a clock, the clocking speed to match with the rest of the parts and synchronize, even though we're not going to plug into exactly the same pin that this is using for its clocking, which it does have on one of the analog pins on the other side of the board here, one of these little guys over here, because we've got the clocking and serial for that. Interestingly enough, on the analog pins. And I would love for someone to explain that to me a little bit in either this example, or maybe I'll have to look into it, as to why our OLED display, which is the fancier display, this one right here, why on earth it's not a digital pin? Why is this an analog pin? That I don't quite understand. So I find that a little confusing, but that's okay. That just means it's something to learn later. So with that, we're going to take our serial, and that's going to get plugged into 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, digital pin number 4. So that is going to pull these apart a little bit. And we're going to plug our friend here into 0, 1, 2, 3, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is right there. And then our clocking pin is going to be the pin directly above it, pin number 5, which is a PWM pin. It's a little bit of a refresher as to what that means. That means that this pin supports pulse width modulation. What does that mean in English? That means that this pin allows us to rapidly turn the input on and off rapidly, which is what we need for controlling certain components. I don't believe that the clock requires a PWM pin, because at least in the sense of this display, none of the analog pins, which are the ones down here, are PWM compatible. So that just seems to be where we're declaring it, and it's just next in line, and honestly that's easy enough to follow, so I'm here for it. Don't make it more difficult than it already needs to be. So with all that where it's supposed to be, I'm going to line our displays up here, and even though we haven't cleared the code from last week, we've hooked up a new component that's not sharing anything else from the previous project. So we shouldn't see anything on here, just the original project on here. So I'm going to plug that in so that we can get this fired up here. And I'm going to get us in frame like that. And then we're going to work with it. now that we have the wiring out of the way, let's dig into the coding side of this. Oh, look at that. It says that right there, actually. Keep this side clear, more components coming tomorrow. Which is fine. We left plenty of room on this side of our breadboard, because everything else is tight to one side. Which is fine. That's not going to hurt anything. I did not, right now, combine the ground and the positive on the left-hand side of the board. But that's fine. I don't anticipate it being much of a problem. So with that, let's get into it. So we've got, as a refresher, we didn't touch these two. Howdy, Pine. Welcome on in. Hands, do the hand thing. Thank you. So yeah, we got our 5 volts and our ground, and then we've got our 2 lines hooked up. We can scroll. Can I scroll? I feel like I should be able to scroll. Oh boy, what's that about? Yikes. Hello, input lag. Really, really bad input lag. Okay. Give me a second. I need to let me restart my connection to the presentation computer. It seems to be misbehaving. That's giving me a really hard time. All right, hold up a minute. I'm gonna hard connect this so that I can hopefully have a better time. Give me 1 second. Ah, okay, I think I fixed it. I had to grab a hard line. I don't know what this thing's beef is with me today, but that's okay. Oh yeah, ha! You haven't seen the Be Right Back screen. Welcome back. Thank you. It's that was a really fun commission. I saw that someone had commissions going, and when I saw it, and I'm like, what? I thought it was adorable. But okay. Back to this. Now when I scroll, all right, it's still a little choppy, but it's at least manageable. I could work with this. For me, when I was trying to move down, it was almost a full 2 seconds delay, which there's no way I could copy and move back and forth between windows with that strong of a delay. I would drive myself nuts trying to work with that. So with that out of the way, we should be good now. I suppose. Okay, there's a wire behind me now, so I just don't back up too fast. Or we're gonna hear a lot of crash. So be careful with that. Okay, so we got that sorted. Now let's see here now. All right. Switch station. What are we playing right now? Let's switch us over to the EDM stuff. All right, cool. Cool. All right, so let's see here. We have got some flavor text. All right, so even our new OLED display is a bit small if we have large amounts of information to display. But this new display isn't limited to just text. It's 128 by 64 pixels in size. And we can turn any of them on or off to display whatever we like, including graphics. Today we're going to run a readiness check on our new display to test out its full capabilities. Now, that sounds like the same thing we saw on day 22. Right? There's no way, I didn't launch the wrong one. That is day 23. I think that's actually the same exact code from the other one. Or comments, I mean. Alright, so Arduino concepts introduced, documented in this particular lesson is the idea of macros, which, okay, this is our first time being exposed to that. And then rounding up calculated values, elapsed time without using a delay call. Ooh, okay, I like that. First page, next page, graphics loop to save on memory. Interesting. Parts and electronic concepts. Yeah. Parts and electronic concepts introduced in this lesson. Okay. Alright, so let's see here. So we already know that we've seen these two particular pieces of code quite a few times. The comment of including the Arduino class and the actual include for Arduino. For us to be able to work with our funny little board that I have here on the bench, we need this particular library or we can't control any of the pins. Now we do have a class here called Wire, and I don't remember off the top of my head if we had that last time. There's no additional comments on that. What that's for. We'll just see as we go along here. Easiest way to figure out what it's for is build the code and then just strip out that include and see what lines aren't valid anymore. That's the easiest way to figure out what a library is being used for. And more importantly, if you're trying to clean up your code and you're not sure if you need a library or not, take a moment, comment it out, try to compile the code. If it catches on fire, you probably still need it and you should uncomment it so that it's, active code again. But we'll leave it for now. Okay, so then we have our include for our 7 segment display. That's the one we just added. So we've got plant guy in there. And then we've got, let's see here, extensive documentation for this library can be found at the GitHub link for those wanting to dive deeper. But we will explain all of the functions used in this lesson. Okay, so this is the library for the OLED display, OLED. Which is, again, okay, that's the... I like to refer to that one as the fancy display. I'm having a really tough time with background music here today. It's all over the place. By all means, let me know if the music gets too loud at some point, because that to me started to actually get on my nerves. Kind of really jumping on all the keys. Alright, let's see what we got here now. Define macros. We started the first few lessons of this course showing how a define, in quotation marks, works, since it's still often used. But on day 4, we introduced the newer and better const, C-O-N-S-T, and have been using it since to define all of our constants. But define does have some capabilities that constant does not. The one we use today is the use of parameters, turning our constants into a simple inline function. Since define performs a simple text substitution, this method executes faster, since it doesn't have any overhead to call in return of a function. Okay, so it's faster. That's the first question I had. Warning. Define macros can cause bugs if the variable passed variable passed in is used to multiple places, in the macro, because the text inside the call is simply replaced with the macro. These examples perform a simple calculation, returning the minutes or seconds from a number representing milliseconds, rounded up to the next highest second by adding 999 milliseconds. This allows our counter to return 00:01 until the instant the counter reaches a 0. Interesting. So, fun to play with, not to eat, are macros. We do have to be careful with them by the way they're defined. Interesting. They don't quite look like Play-Doh, but they definitely sound like them. Okay. So we've got two definitions, our number of minutes and our number of seconds. Now we can see here, milliseconds. Okay, milliseconds is the name of our variable that is inside of our macro. Not a function. I was going to say function. That's not correct. This is a macro. And then we can see here that we're taking the milliseconds variable that's in the number of minutes macro, adding 999, dividing it by 1,000, and then taking that and dividing that by 60. The seconds is the same computation, but we're using something you might not be super familiar with in computer math, like the basic math. You can get what's called a remainder. The remainder is dictated by the percent symbol. So in this math here, I would take our reading of milliseconds, add 999, divide by 1,000, and then get the remainder of what happens when you divide that number by 60. So the number that comes after the decimal point is what it's going to return. I don't know too many pieces of code I've ever written that I've needed to use that. But that's what that means. It's what's left. A good example of that would be to take, say, the number 4, right? Divide it by 3, right? Well, in this case, percent it by 3, and you would get 1, because 3 fits inside of 4 one time, leaving a remainder of 1. That's the difference. Now, actually, something I am a little curious about here. Let me take a quick peek and see if I have... No, it does not work that way on Windows. That's memory add, memory subtract, memory store. What if I go to my programming calculator? Can I do it that way? I can. Okay, hold up. I could show this. This is a thing I can do. Because this I very much myself would also use a visual representation of what this looks like. Okay, so our standard calculator won't let us see this, so we have to switch it from standard to scientific. Or excuse me, to programmer. Okay. So normally, when you would take 4 and divide it by 3, is this holding on to what I was doing before? Or do I have to do it? I might have to do it this way first. 4 divided by 3 gets you 1, and then 0.33333. But there's 1 that's left over from taking how many times 3 fits inside of 4. So there's a remainder of 1, but when you look at this in a mathematical standard computation, you get a bunch of 3s. But in the programming space, if I take 4 remainder out of 3, that's when it gives me the 1. Now, I'm not sure why when I did that with the divide, it gave me a 1. That doesn't make sense. I'm not entirely sure what that's about, but that just gives a visual representation on what that is, difference-wise, between the two. A little funky, but we'll work with it. Okay. And then we're going to define our counter display clock pins and the serial line. So that's going to be the clock and DIO or serial. Now we are using a defined for this variable, which is fine. This is that thing they were talking about, how we would normally use const for constant. Well, a define is apparently a quicker way to do this, and it saves more memory. So cool. Another thing too that you'll notice is that we didn't define what this variable is. Normally when we do a constant or we make a variable, we indicate what we're going to put in it, whether it's a string, an integer, a long, a double. We don't do that with a define. Not necessarily sure why, but we just don't. So that's interesting. Wonder why we don't put a label on the container. Huh. All right, let's see what we got here. This constructor for our OLED differs from the one used previous days. Okay, so this is going to be a little different by the way the code is. It's not an exact duplicate. Changing the underscore f underscore to underscore number 2 underscore. This indicates that instead of using a full-sized buffer to draw to our OLED display, a smaller 256 byte buffer will be used along with the first and next page's calls. This gives us more memory for other variables, though the display may update slower. Okay, that makes sense to me, because if you're taking the container that holds temporarily how much stuff that you can draw to the display, it's going to take more time, right? Perfect example to compare a buffer to how much RAM is in your computer. If your computer has 4 gigs of RAM and you open up a couple tabs of Chrome, your computer is going to move like it's got a walker. It's going to go slow, right? Because it has to take time to take what you're working on in from the RAM and move it back to the disk temporarily to page it, because it's going to run out of space. And the concept of what we're doing here with a buffer is that there's less room to hold in that temporary space so that we can continue to draw through the different screens that we're going to be looking at. So that ends up giving us more calls that require us to get what we want out of the permanent storage that's on our little Arduino board. We have to go back to the primary storage, say put this in memory, and then show it to the end user. The smaller that container is, the more times we have to go back to the disk and ask for the stuff. And then as we cycle through it, we'll notice it's slower. So I don't know how much slower this is going to be, but as for a one-to-one relationship, I guess we'll see. I don't necessarily think it's going to be anything too particularly over the top, but we shall see. And add this stuff too. All right, so we have that, and then we also have defined the height and width. Oh boy. Hi, Maple. Oh God. Hi, everyone. Maple, my God, what were you doing? Rate is 69. Oh, nice. I can't help myself. Patupa Llamas, thank you for the follow. Good to see you. It's been a little while. We're here, the dough. Don't shoot. Oh God, that's a fun raid message. Skyly ZTV. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Welcome and thank you for the follow. For those of you who don't know me, I am TechHead41. I spend time here on Twitch and I do silly things that involve technology. In this case today, we're working with a developmental board kit known as the Arduino, and we're going to make pretty things happen on the display, and we're going to work through some coding, and hopefully I don't melt in the process. I see a suspicious mug. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Oh my word. Dewdrop, thank you for the follow. I apologize, you have successfully locked up the toaster. Oh my word. Come on, Hurl, you know you can't get away from it. You love it. Dragon scales. I'm acquired wife. Oh, let's go, Maple. That's excellent. Well, you two enjoy yourselves. This is fair. Well, I hope you all enjoyed spending time with Maple. She is quite a lovely individual. She's the dough that knows, and no one can change my mind. Okay, I'm gonna get you all up to speed. What we have here on our bench is a couple of displays. Now, right now, the exploratory lander display, which is that lovely piece right there, is currently, is that still cycling? Hope I switched scenes. Am I still alive? Hope so. Oh, I am seeing some wild lag now. Ah, that's fun. Okay, so let me just take a quick peek at that. Did the display lock up or did I lock up? Oh, okay, cool. My camera disconnected. That's exciting. Let's see if that's seen. Let's come back. All right, we will work with that. We'll get that fixed. All right, let me see here. Yeah, I know. That's the first time I've ever had the bench cam lock up on me, though. Oh, I see why. Hang on, it closed the shutter on itself. I don't know why it did that. So I'm gonna go on to. I think about that is camera. Hang on, we can go. Here, and then I have to go back into. Ah! Oh my goodness. Parties to investigate. That is adorable. Oh my word. Oh my word. Autocorrect changed shutter to it's fine. I knew what you meant. It's fine. I know what the problem is. I just don't know why it went and took a nap on me. No. Alright, that's back on. So now, if we minimize that, we go away, we come back. This thing has got a sense of humor, and I am not laughing. And I think that'll refresh the source, right? There we go. Fixed it. Okay, that's better. That's more of what's supposed to actually be happening. Okay, so yes. So on our little exploratory lander that we have over here, we have the previous day's example that it's cycling through right now. This is basically just the show and tell piece of what the actual board itself is doing based on our example. So with today, we're going to be making stuff appear on the upper display that says 4-digit display. That's the one above it. Okay, now that we have that turned back on, fantastic. We are going to continue onwards here through our different code. So let me see where we're at here. So we brought over the constants of the lander height and width. Okay, so that's where we're picking up here. So what we need to do is we need to bring over the rest of the define here, a couple chunks at a time. I'll have to excuse the hand tracking. This particular sensor tends to break on me. Don't you just love that? I know I do. Okay, so what we've got here in the next line of code is what we want to show on our 7-segment display. That was the upper display that looked like a bunch of 8s that were turned off. What we do here is to spell out the word done on that display. We have to tell the code which segments make up that word. So for the D, we have to turn on segments B, C, D, E, and G. For the O, it's the letters you see below, and so on and so forth for the N and the E. So when we call on the array variable done, which holds all of our letters together in one variable by its name to make life a little easier, that tells the display all the different sections of the display to turn on in one click. Okay. So now we have that. We're almost ready to do the void setup on this. We're almost there. This is all the stuff that has to happen once outside of the setup. This is just when the code immediately starts, this is what it's going to do. And then the void setup is code that's only ever run once. And then the main loop is run multiple times over the course of the code. Now what we have here is to define our amount of time. So our countdown is going to be in milliseconds. Oh, thank you for the follow, Mr. Hurl. Okay, thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it. Okay, so our countdown is 5 multiplied by 1,000. That takes us into 5,000 milliseconds. And then from there, we get to actually do our void setup. Now let me see how much of this code is actually setup code. Okay, so the loop starts down here. So there's a fair amount of flavor text that's in here. All right, let's bring over the first little bit of this. Like so. That got untabbed. Put that back where it belongs. All right, beautiful. So first line here in setup is to turn on the serial line. So serial begin 9600 baud is the speed that we're going to be showing as we look between the computer and the terminal window when I get it open, which we'll get there. Friend of yours recently got a drone that uses Wi-Fi for control. Makes its own unsecured Wi-Fi network. That's terrifying. Oh goodness. That's a great way to have your drone just drive off without you. Hopefully there's a way to secure that. That's kind of terrifying. Actually, I could turn on the serial monitor because we're going to need that anyway. The Amiga King? I'm tough with names, folks. You gotta give me some some leeway. Thank you for the follow. If you're coming to find someone saying your name correctly, you're not gonna find it here. I'm terrible with that. I did. Let's go. I'm terrible with that. I really am. All right, I want the serial monitor. Okay, cool. So this section down here that's behind my floofy ears is the serial monitor. By using this serial begin, that's going to have a connection between the board and the computer. And then any of the things it tells us are going to show up in this white box right here. Ah, like the 90s computer. Okay, roger, roger. And then let's see here. So our counter display is the 7-segment display. We're going to set it to maximum brightness, which is a value of 7. And then we're going to clear the display. One of the things that's important to know when you're working with Arduinos and code with Arduinos is that when the project stops, when it stops receiving information, everything that was on is still on. Everything that is off stays off. The code just stops. If it was being fed something from the computer, the action of unplugging it causes it to just freeze in place. It's not locked up, it's just waiting for more additional input. Got a root Linux terminal. Hopefully it didn't fall out of the sky. When this happens, when the project starts back up again, all the values are still set to what they were from what it may have read from memory, which means we're going to call the clear display at the beginning of setup to make sure that we're not dealing with any gobbledygook from the previous runs of the project. And then let's see here. So the OLED display, which is the fancier one of the two, is going to need to be initialized. So we're doing that here. And then cool thing with that display is you actually get to choose what font pack that you actually show on the display. In this case, we're using this particular font pack, which looks a little bit like a gobbledygook, but it's one that's compatible. And then we have, let's see, we have a function here, or what would I guess I can call this a subclass. I'm not sure what the right phrasing would be for this. But this is where we can call to get the height of the text we're working with. See, the trouble with manually writing to a display is that you need to know where you wrote on the previous line of code. So by having the height of the tallest thing allows you to know how far down to go to write your next line that's going to show on the display. It's an incredibly manual process with a board like this working with one of these displays, which is why you'll probably notice there's not a lot of projects online that are starter friendly that use an OLED display. It's a little bit advanced. that includes me. And then, of course, the top position of it, which again helps us with alignment. All right, so let's see what we got here. All right, so display starting status of our Lander's OLED display. This is talking about the page buffer and then the different functions. So first page, this function starts the drawing routine. It initializes the buffer with the first page or segment of the display. The next page is after drawing the first page in its entirety, the function calls in a loop. Each call loads the next segment into the buffer and allows you to draw additional stuff on the display. And then looping combines the first and next page to just loop endlessly through the content until something in the code would tell it to stop. Thank you for the shout out. I was hoping you were lurking in the shadows. Okay, so we need to bring over in our initial setup here. Our first page, which interestingly enough is not in the loop. It's in the initial startup. It's interesting. Okay, now this next section I'm just going to bring over in its entirety. That's where the void is going to end, which means I need to go from here to the do loop. Okay, so let me save that, and then actually I shouldn't verify it yet, because if I'm calling on something that's not, if I didn't copy over everything, it might bark at me. So I'm gonna wait on that. Well, thank you for the follow. Rowain, I think is the way that is supposed to be pronounced. Hopefully I'm not too far off the mark. Again, I apologize if I say your name wrong. I'm bad with that. Let's see here. All right, I want a space between that and this. Get a little space action going on here. Okay, so we're gonna go into, interestingly enough, a loop in the initial setup, which I'm not going to lie to you is a little unusual. Normally we don't loop through stuff in setup, but okay, let's see what we're looping through. So we're going to draw the words exploration lander. That's what's in quotation marks here, and that's what the drawString function does. It takes that exact chunk of words and then sends it over to the buffer to then be actually printed on the display. And then we're also going to draw after that the phrase liftoff sequence. Oh, I know why we're looping through this. I'll be able to explain that in a second. Drawstring 0, lander display, where we're going to take the height of the display, subtract out the maximum height of characters, and then add additional words of countdown active. Why are we adding a loop in the initial setup? Looping in relationship to a display gives us the power to be able to take the screens and then take text and turn it on and turn it off, which gives us the impression of something blinking on the display. There is no blink function that comes with any of these libraries. So by looping through the code and turning certain words on and off between iterations of the loop gives us the visual appearance of blinking text on our display. And that's exactly why we're doing this. Where they're going to position it by taking the height of our display, getting the maximum height of our characters. So it looks like the D in countdown is the highest, and then subtracting that pixel wise so that we don't accidentally overwrite it, or another phrasing for it is clobber it in our code. Okay, so then we've got the width and height, And then we're going to do that while there's a next page. And we can see here, blink the countdown on our timer before beginning the actual countdown. So we can see here that this is going to blink. Is there an amount of time? It says next page. I guess that means we're only going to run through this loop until we've shown everything at least once. Because I would think once you run out of the next display, that must mean that's why we continue forward. We'll see. We'll see what that ends up looking like. And then we can see here we're going to clear. Display countdown. And then delay for 200 milliseconds. Okay, so serial print line means that we're going to print those words down here in our little white box. Nothing is going to appear on either of the two displays that we have sitting on the workbench. And then from there, we actually go into our loop. Now let's see how big our loop is, because last time there was an awful lot. It's not nearly as much code this time. But then again, we're not going through all the different possibilities of really showing off what the display can do. So it looks like it's a little bit more compact this time around. Okay, since I am actively fighting a lag here, I'm not entirely sure why, I'm going to pull all this over, and then I'll just scroll through it, and we'll just walk through it, because this lag is really starting to get me. So what we're going to do is just graciously pull this over. And I'm going to save, because that's important. And then let me hit verify. We're not going to upload the code. This will just confirm to me that I didn't forget to bring over something. It's going to take a moment and compile the code, and then we can wander the rest of the way through it. So for those of you who haven't seen this before, this is a learning developmental kit. And if I swing back over to our bench view, what we have here is, we're waiting for that to compile, which doesn't take too much time. We've got this developmental board that we have hooked up to our breadboard that came with the kit called 30 Days Lost in Space. And these are guided examples that allow you to learn the different things you control at a very low level in the space of electronics, working with actual individual components. So the idea of programming something like the push buttons, right? There's 16 of them on this little board, and working with buzzers, things like that. I am not sponsored in any sense of the phrase. I just found that this was something that seemed like it was fairly interesting, and felt like it would be a good thing to go through this together. Because there's plenty of new concepts that are in this that I am not intimately familiar with, as I am with other things. The displays, the 7-segment display I've seen before, which is the upper one that is off right now, not showing anything. And then there is the lower one, which is the OLED display, the one that's showing all the fancy graphics at this time. So with that, if anybody's interested in doing it, you could just drop it in Google, that phrasing, and it's in the title too if anybody's interested. Just a computer with a USB port is all you need to be able to play with one of these kits. Okay, so we got everything over here and we're in our loop. So let's see what we're actually doing. All right, so we've got static unassigned long. Time remaining is the countdown in milliseconds. Okay, so our countdown in milliseconds, which we did have up here and declared near the top. We're just giving it a more friendly phrasing. We're not doing anything to it. Initialize static variables. first time through the loop that will retain the values between the looping executions. Okay. Making a GPU for fun. Well, that sounds like a pretty fun project. Definitely outside my wheelhouse, but by all means, I wish you the best of luck. That sounds like a pretty heavy endeavor. Let's see here. So these are unsigned numbers. Wonder why they're static. Static variables, first time through the loop, change value. And then our countdown time start is equal to the milliseconds function, which if I double click on that, and scroll back up here, I don't see a macro for that. So that must be that code must be further down in the project. So if I scroll down here, huh, that must be an internal call to something then. Unsigned long milliseconds. All right. Yeah, we'll just run with it then. Time remaining. Display the milliseconds remaining on the serial console, which is our little white window down here. And then display minutes and seconds on the counter display. So serial print line is the area down here, and the display counter is that several segment display that we're going to toy with. I am happy that you want to run Doom on it. That definitely sounds like I've seen Doom run on things that should never have run on. That sounds like a good time. Alright, so the rest of our code looks like it lives inside of this if statement. Let me scroll down up until a point, at least anyway. Okay, so while the time remaining is, if the time remaining is equal to 0, then we do this stuff below. But if there's any remaining time, we'll just skip over this section. So we'll say in the terminal down here that we're done, show that on our lovely little display that we have on the bench. And then we're going to do some additional stuff on the fancier display. Each time we display a line of text on our display, the Y offset is updated to point to the next available point for drawing. Display the first two lines, which we have exploratory lander and lift off aborted. Interesting. And then set our Y offset to 0.4 lines above the bottom of the display. That means that allows us to draw something directly near the bottom. We then draw that our thrusters are off, system is off, confirmation is off, and then countdown being aborted. And then while lander, next page, stop here by looping forever with a 1. Now that is a do while loop that runs forever inside of this if statement. Interesting. Well, if we get trapped in here, then that would cause us to stop, technically. Because if there's no exit out of a loop, that's called an endless loop, and you literally are there forever. So let's see under what condition that we would technically want that in, right? Because that sounds like that's our quote-unquote end goal, is to reach that point. I guess that technically stops the code, right? That's what it would be doing. And then let's see here. We've got our elapsed time is milliseconds minus the countdown's start time. If elapse is less than the countdown time, we do a little bit of math to get the time that's remaining. Otherwise, it's a 0. because you never want to be able to go below 0 when you're counting down to 0. That is an excellent catch-all, so that if your math bumps you below 0, it just brings you back up by manually setting it to a 0. That's why you would do something like that. It looks a little funny, but that's the reasoning behind it. Doom 3. I feel like that requires at least a little bit of oomph to it. Still sounds fun, though. Let's see here. Alright, so we're going to call upon our define once again. Number of minutes, and then we pull over our millisecond values. Display the minutes in the first 2 places, and then we're going to activate the colon. So with the 7-segment display, there's the value you want to display, which if you're just passing a number, that it can show anywhere between 0 and 4 nines, so that's 9999. This gobbledygook right next to the word minutes is the format of how things should look. That actually is what allows us to turn the 2 dots that makes up the colon on that on or off. And then the rest of this here, we've got whether we want leading zeros or not. So that means that as we're counting down, zeros to the front of it will actually show. So that's why it's true. And then the length in our position values. Display the given argument with a decimal number. The dots between the digits or colon can be individually controlled, which we're going to turn them on because it's going to be a countdown number. And then from here, draw a test on our lander display at coordinates x, y, returning the new y. Value that is immediately below the new line of text. So we're going to take those 2 positions and then pass them to the display. And then it just draws it right below it. Return new y offset on the display. The biggest part is keeping track on where any of this stuff actually goes, because if you lose track, that's going to be a bit of a mess to try to recover from. Draw an image of our lander drawn with frames and triangles. Now, I don't know any more than I do this time than I did last time on this, other than this is how we make the triangles. There's no uploaded PNG. It's just coordinate values is what makes up this. How you get to this point, I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure there's probably some way to actually work out what you would actually stick in here for this, but you call the draw frame, which is actually what calls the option to allow us to actually draw stuff on the display that's not just a number or a letter. And then we've got the X location, and then our coordinates to actually just draw the ship. That's pretty much what that ends up doing. And that's actually the bottom of the code. So with a decent run through of all of it, let's upload it to the board, and if everything works according to plan, we should actually see some stuff happen here. Maybe I could even just turn it into a cheap display deck. Maybe that could be the case. I would be curious as to how much space that would actually take up, though. That sounds like a fair amount of components. Out of curiosity, are you planning on working with full-size components or the SMC counterparts that are a lot smaller but require specialized tools to actually work with? Okay, so all I gotta do to upload this is click the button here, and then we should see some action in our terminal and over there. So we're gonna let that compile. Full size, less tools. That's understandable. Okay. So, a little bit of good news, bad news. I had the code upside down. But that's okay. So we got done. Let me restart that because we weren't looking at it. This looks like it was a 5-second countdown. Yeah, 5. Oh, okay, so that's those initial blinks. 3, 2, 1. And then we got that. All right, let me flip that upside right. But we're going to do that with code. I'm not physically going to move the board. I'm going to show you how we can flip that text around because our display is currently upside down. Okay, so to do that, we are going to nab out of here. There's a line of code that allows us to flip this stuff technically upside down, and it was a part of the previous day. Yeah, I've got a personal project that I'm going to be making with full-size components, and I will be sharing that with all of you, by the way. I have been a little quiet on this because it's my first time trying to order and build my own custom PCB board. And I wanted to make sure I had a pretty decent understanding, because as a community, we're going to make a thing. I'm working through some initial understanding before I try to bring a level of presentation, because to be honest with you, if I don't have any idea what I'm doing, then it doesn't really make for a decent presentation. It doesn't really feel terribly engaging. So I'm doing a fair amount of research on my part to making sure that I can bring something to you that is, if nothing else, at least entertaining to watch. I know this stuff is pretty heavy on the technical side, which is why I also play games on stream too. This is not all I do. I've played Euro Truck Simulator. I just recently got into that, and I'm really big with the 90s games. Freddy Fish, I mean, Humongous Entertainment as a whole, really. But Freddy Fish, Putt Putt, Pajama Sam, I love those games. Because I am a variety streamer, and I do this stuff for fun. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find that line I was talking about. Which I think is a part of the initial setup. Because we certainly wouldn't want to run it more than once. So it's offsets. That's right, I forgot how code heavy this was. It's okay, I know what I'm looking for. Just have to do a little bit of dumpster diving in the code from the previous example to find it. There it is. Trying to remember what the phrasing was behind it. Okay, so it was a part of the setup. So it's going to be this one right here. And that is going to go in our setup. So we have to scroll up a fair amount for void loop. There is our void setup. And it's in relationship to the lander. And the name of the display object is the same, so I actually don't have to change anything. But this is actually what allows us to flip the display via the code and leave everything else the same. So we're going to verify that. Make sure we get a thumbs up from the compiler, and we did. Clear the terminal behind my set of fluffy ears. And now when we look at this and I tell it to run again, we're going to get the words right side up this time. That's better. Exploratory lander, liftoff sequence, countdown activated. We get the blinking, countdown, and we hit the bottom, and then now that's what that loop is all about right there. So we are now trapped in this loop forever. The code will go no further. It says exploratory lander, liftoff has been aborted, the thrusters are off, the system is off, confirm is off, countdown has been aborted. So in the grand scheme of this particular exercise via what they gave us, the ship is not going to move. Not yet. Not on this particular day of the examples. Which is why we have an endless loop nested inside of this example. Normally, you don't have the idea of a forever loop inside of the code because the primary loop is the one that loops over and over and over again. But having that trap code in there prevents it from going any further because as far as this example is concerned, that's all it was going to do. What? Oh my word. We're contacting the internet! Thank you for the subscription. I greatly appreciate it. It helps a bunch with this. Anything that you give me that goes towards subs goes towards this. So again, thank you, Amiga King. It is appreciated. I hope you like the subscription sound. I had a lot of fun picking that out. I have redeems. I don't have a lot of them, but there's other really fun sounds that that I have here on this channel, particularly the haunted one. That one's a lot of fun. Thank you. Yes, the silliness is real. I like your funny words, Magic Man. That's in quotes. Why do I know that? What is that from? I'm convinced that's from something I've seen. I don't go outside. I feel like this is a pretty good indication of that. I'm sure that it's probably from something, but I don't know what it is. Clone High, yes, I wouldn't have known that. I'm thinking of something else. See, to me, I think of Magic Man from Adventure Time, which I know that's not what that was from, but that's who I think of. Ridiculously silly, if nothing else. That's okay. But yeah, so I stream on Wednesdays, and the next go around, we'll be playing a game because I usually rotate through them. For starting time, I'm usually here around 6:30, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for some of you, I am hilariously early in the morning. For some of you, I'm hilariously late. For some of you, you're in the same time zone. But I like doing silly stuff. And this is just one of the more educational sides of what I do. So with that, I'm going to ask for all of you to stick around with me for a couple of moments where I locate where we're going to head off to. Oh, that's weird. My TTS bot didn't work. King, I'm gonna give you those points back. I don't know why that didn't trigger. There we go. Okay. Beautiful. Gotta love it when things kind of don't really work, but they kind of work, but they don't, but they do. If that's not what the computer space is, I don't know what is. Alrighty, let me see where we are here now. Alright, beautiful. I know where we are going to wander off to. I'm And I also know that this is why I use copy and paste. So it looks like our friend here is playing some Warframe. So we are going to wander over here. Things break, things work. Hope that they're going to continue to function moving forward. Yeah, I feel that. That's what that be. But that's okay. So, April, if you're lurking in the background, I appreciate the raid. Thank you. Appreciate everyone who decided to stick around and those who decide to interact. If you're lurking, just know that it's perfectly fine too. I like showing this kind of goofy stuff off. So if you think it's interesting, drop a follow. Totally fine. For those of you who had, again, I appreciate it. And I will see you all around for next Wednesday. So with that, I wish you all a nice evening.